and welcome back to Kim Talks. I'm your host, Kim Hayden. I am super excited to be here talking all things real estate with a gal that has an incredible story. And you know what? She is doing what so many think about. So, we're going to be sharing stories on how you can create your wealth through investment. And it's not as hard as you think. But before we get started, today's episode is brought to you by www.queenofresilience.shop. So shop online for a bit of sass and fun. So straighten your crown and shop around at queenofresilience.shop. So today's guest is Pam Hill. She's the founder and CEO of My Smart Cousin. As a real estate investor, she owns 25 properties and 31 units, all purchased for the price of a car. Okay. And in some cases, a bicycle, anywhere from $2,500 to $35,000. This is crazy. Pam began her real estate investment career 10 years ago during the Great Recession as a side hustle while working as an executive at the electric utility company. Since then, Pam has become the smart cousin to everyone in her family and her personal finance and real estate advice, as well as a real estate investment coach, teaching others how to buy their first or 101st property for the price of a car. Pam, hold on one second. Okay, I just had a little bit of interference there. Pam is a Dartmouth and Harvard grad. Holy crow, we are in good company today, folks. Coaches her clients in English, Spanish, Mandarin, Chinese, when required, and as a graduate of the Johns Hopkins Chinese Studies program in Nanjing, I think I said that right, China. I obviously don't speak Mandarin or Chinese. So, you know what? I am absolutely honored and blown away. And I believe the information we're going to get today will be mind blowing. And Pam, you know what? As a real estate agent of 22 years, we had investments, we liquidated investments, we're looking at stocking back up. And I think that you are going to become my favorite cousin, not just a smart cousin, but my favorite cousin. Welcome aboard, Pam. This is
Love
awesome.
it, love it. Thank you so much. You are fantastic, Kim, and I know that this is going to be such a great conversation for your audience. Just as you say, it really isn't as hard. You yourself know this. You already know from the inside looking out. It's not as hard as folks think.
Absolutely. Okay, so Pam, we're going to dive into the nitty gritty because obviously, if you're this smart, must have been born wealthy and in a privileged neighborhood, and everything's been given to you, and you just wanted to go out and see how cheap you could buy stuff, right? I'm sure that's the story here, right? No,
Not at
that's not the
all.
story.
I was not
Okay.
fed from the silver spoon at all. So
Well,
I
take us
grew
down
up.
this journey because people want to know.
Absolutely. I grew up probably like most folks with a working class, but hardworking set of parents. And I got a chance to see how important real estate was from a young age because it's the thing that my parents aspired to own their very own home. And as I got older, I watched some of the neighbors actually with some regret. I watched how the children didn't always hold on to the real estate as parents moved on. And that seed was planted early on of how important it is to make sure that we not just acquire real estate, but probably this is something you teach as well, how important it is to have the mindset where you can continue to hold on to that wealth and build that wealth. And how I got started with My Smart Cousin is that I became, through watching what happened in my neighborhood, I became that cousin that would always reach out to family, ask them, so remember that 401k investment you told me you were going to make last year at the family reunion? How's that coming? Or I remember that you said you want to move out of your apartment and begin to buy something. How can I help you? What can we do? So I really take it to heart with both family, with friends, and clearly with my clients.
Okay, so um, So this was you is this a self-taught then? Like, you
Yes.
didn't have your parents, so if you don't
Nope.
mind me asking, give us a
Absolutely.
set of visual
Yep.
of what was your childhood home like?
Absolutely.
What was the finances within your home?
Yep. So I call it loving, but peanut butter and jelly jars were drinking vessels, right? So certainly no bone china type thing as part of our normal day to day. A family where my mom worked for the airlines as an agent on the phone, and my dad was a taxi driver. And they just busted with pride as I continue to move up academically. But they certainly didn't have dinner time conversations steeped in Wall Street and financials. And when I got to college, when I got to Dartmouth, which is in New Hampshire, I was blown away by what normal looked like for a lot of my classmates, which was private school. I'm a public school kid, which was wealthy. I washed dishes my freshman year as part of my work study program. So I got a chance to sort of peek behind the curtain and see what things look like. And I think you can't ignore the fact either that Dartmouth certainly reaches out to develop its minorities, but the year I was there, of our class of our freshman class had about 1,060 or so kids that were admitted and attended, and of that, about 57 were Black. So that was new for me too, being in such a dramatic minority, and all of that really motivated me to make sure that if I had this privileged position as someone who both had higher education and learned how to really navigate, let's face it, navigate in a world that was heavily privileged, that it was my obligation to also bring the community with me, teach them and others who are not part of my direct um, clan, if you will, through the family, but more broadly. And I do this not just with clients, these conversations, but even with my tenants, talking with them about how they can move from renting to owning and investigating programs that exist for first time owners so they can do that and give that to their kids.
Amazing, amazing. So Dartmouth, I mean, like everybody knows that name. Like that's very, like these are very prestigious schools that you are
Yeah.
aligned with, and not coming from your parents worked university educated, and
Right.
you've driven this all on your own. Um, Before we dive into your what you do now, one of the things I'd like to ask is what were you reading or filling yourself with in order to have that drive as a young woman to get to Harvard? I mean, that's crazy amazing. It
Yeah.
really is. So how were you filling that drive?
Yes, yes, yes. So I always have to start off with the thankfulness to my parents, right? Because absolutely, things can certainly go down a different path, even if they themselves aren't college educated, if they don't have that drive and vision. And it's funny, my mom attended 1 year or 2 years of college before I was born, but then she got motivated and we both graduated, me from Harvard and her from a city university the same year. So that was awesome. But as far as how I motivated myself and what I filled myself with, I'd say I always had the entrepreneurial bug from young. And again, I tend to be very both humble as well as believing that everyone has these same gifts. So I don't think I would have been unique as a child in selling flower seeds. And then as I got older, okay, it's school time. My classmates like candy. I can buy candy and sell candy, and so on. Straight through college and out of college. So I always look for opportunities to be an investor and not just someone who worked. I can remember two books when I was very young, The Millionaire Next Door, and of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which most everyone knows. And when you're reading these books in your 20s or 30s, it's monumental. And so I made up my mind then and there that I would be that millionaire next door. And I certainly would follow the principles in Rich Dad, Poor Dad to build up real estate.
Amazing, amazing. So, that perfect segue into what you do. So share with us, we alluded to the fact that you're buying, properties for the price of a good bicycle, a mountain bike. I mean, I know the people who have spent $2,500 on a mountain bike. So
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
share with us, my smart cousin, how you got started, which is obviously very organic, but you also had to put a business practice around it. And as an
Absolutely.
entrepreneur, when you build something from the ground, it's not easy. So share with me that, what
Yes.
what you do.
Absolutely. So, how I got started in real estate as an investor, as opposed to as a home buyer, was about 10 years ago when my husband, we were dating at the time, but when he was looking for his first house here in the US, and he lived in Delaware, one part of Delaware, I lived in another. And so I went with him to look at houses, just kind of tagging along for fun, and we were blown away by how cheap houses were. I would have never ever guessed that a house could be bought for less than six figures. So we saw houses not just five figures like 90,000, but straight on down to 20,000. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. So there were homes in probably the kind of neighborhoods I grew up in, working class neighborhoods, majority Black, but also majority hardworking folks. And these homes were $25,000, and just good, solid family houses. And there were many people who were renting in these neighborhoods, but some were owning. So I decided then and there that I was going to start to buy these kinds of homes and control at least two of the things that you can control for a tenant, because there's really three things I tell my tenants that they should look for and consider. One is the neighborhood, two is the house, three is the landlord. So I can certainly control being a great landlord and giving them a great house. I can't always control the neighborhood, but I work even there to be a partner by reaching out to the chief of police, for instance, if things are a little loud, shall we say, on the block, and that's not a great thing for the tenant. Or if they have a car that's not theirs, that's been broken down and parked in front of their house, I call the city and ask them to move that. So I look to treat the neighborhood like I live there, because I don't want to be afraid when I'm there, and I don't want them to be afraid when they are there. So that's how I started, was tagging along, seeing my husband, and then looking at house after house after house. Some of them I bought through auctions and was able to buy several at once. For instance, about 3 years ago, I bought four houses, each for $7,000 in a county auction. Two were great, two were duds. And so I learned from that as well. The two that were great, I had them rented out in a matter of months. So this is why I focus on houses that are that price of a car, because you really can't lose, in my view. You can't lose for two reasons. One, because you have an annuity just meaning something that's going to pay you month after month after month, kind of like a bond. And what will pay you month after month is a house that you fix up and rent out. You are never going to be without a family who needs it. So that's one way you can't lose. The second way you can't lose is by buying it so low. You're really not going to cry into your glass of wine if the house goes from $7,000 to, gee, it's only worth 5,000. Oh, poor Pam. No, and moreover, the likelihood of it doing that is minuscule compared to the
Minuscule.
likelihood, like exactly the likelihood of it going instead to 30. Or really, for me, they're lottery tickets. You never know if one of these neighborhoods is going to become your next $1 million neighborhood, as has happened in, I was going to say parts of Brooklyn, but probably the entirety of Brooklyn in New York City and a number of other areas.
Gentrification is huge, and there are markers that you can look for, like location and accessibility, schools, that if a city is underneath. I know that, like Tennessee is crazy right now, and like it is a awesome market to invest in. It also has, and what's interesting is if you do some Google searches, you can easily find out who's pulling out small business licenses. So Tennessee has one of the highest level of small business license requests out of any other
Wow.
state.
Wow.
So if people are starting businesses, that means that they're working actively to improve or control their lives,
Yes,
their personal revenue. So obviously having real estate in that space, they go up, real estate goes up, right?
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
do you only invest in where you live, or do you invest in other areas?
I invest at this point principally where I live. So when I say principally, meaning within about a 50-mile radius. And so because of Delaware and Pennsylvania and New Jersey, the part that I live in Pennsylvania, being so close, they're almost not like states. They're almost like cities because of them being only a few miles away from one another where I live. So that makes it very easy. But I would say that said, this model of buying a house for the price of a car, you mentioned Tennessee. So Tennessee would be, gosh, probably about 400 miles away from me. So that is not at all easy to get to. But you can work with a perfectly capable property manager. And I would absolutely encourage folks and have helped folks to do that. And that way they can get involved in these markets. I think about Atlanta, which is a city in Georgia that I used to live in. And I can remember thinking, this was before I was investing, but thinking, gee, this place is going to get big time one day. But that's where, and I'm sure this is how you coach your folks, it's not enough to just think it. You must do. Or
Absolutely.
you then watch in hindsight, well, yeah, I sure did know that was going to blow up. And now a lot of Atlanta is back to that six figures that I talk about, more than 100, 200, 300. You really can't believe it. And these self same homes were in the 20s when I was there, 20s and 30s. Um, so absolutely, for folks who are seeing Tennessee, as you give that as an example, and there are many other. Every day I look on Zillow, there are hundreds of houses every single day that are listed for the price of a car. You don't have to live near these places. You can decide to develop a strategy where maybe you buy 3, 4, 5. So now you're scaling and you use a property manager and you hire a handyman crew. And then they become your eyes on the ground and your workers on the ground.
Absolutely. Wichita, Kansas is where I'm from originally. And in the last in the last 6 months, I've seen prices go up 30% on average. However, if you go just literally 40 minutes outside a city center, they haven't experienced that. And if you go an hour and 30 minutes outside a city center, you can still get houses for that $25,000 mark. And what's really crazy is adjacent to a lot of these flyover states, a lot of these
Mm,
flyover cities, adjacent to the cities will be old farms that no longer anybody's farming, and that's land.
that's
That's
it.
land, and there's huge opportunity. I know that Warren Buffett is like doubled down into like the modular, mobile, all of that because
Hmm.
affordable housing, right?
Yes.
So there's so many opportunities out there. So let's say, hypothetically, let's say it's a single mom. Let's create a scenario.
Hmm.
Okay. Single mom that doesn't get child support because we know how a lot of these women don't get any support, right? She's hustling hard, working 2, 3 jobs and getting $10,000 right off the bat for an investment is not an option. She's got maybe 5. Do you know of any kind of grants or programs, loans, companies out there that if she had $5,000 that she could get a matching investment or anything along those lines?
Yes. So if that enterprising woman were my client, first thing I would do, I would naturally know where it is that she lives, so that we could begin to investigate first-time home buyer funding, which is not matched base. It's just here you go. So first time, let's say for instance, she lived right here in Pennsylvania where I am, and maybe she lived in Philly. I'm not in Philly, but I'm not far from there. Let's say she lives in a large city like Philadelphia. So we would then go online and we would find first time home buyer funding for people who are moving to Philadelphia. And I would ask her, have you ever owned a home before in Philly? And if she says no, great, you're going to qualify. If she says, you know what, yes, I owned one, but not in Philly. I owned one in another part of Pennsylvania or elsewhere. I'd say, you know what, as far as Philly's concerned, you're new to them, so you're probably going to qualify. So that's the first thing we do. Then we look to see what it takes to get that money. Often it's a class, some kind of budgeting class. So I would have her go through that. And once she passes that, which is not terribly difficult, that's going to be about $4,000 or $5,000 that's in her pocket that can be used towards down payment and closing costs. So that's the first thing. Second thing I would do, if she is receiving any kind of assistance, let's say she's receiving a housing choice voucher, which is a Section 8 kind of voucher, I would work with her housing choice representative, let's call it that, the person who is her case manager, to see how she can qualify to instead receive mortgage assistance rather than renter's assistance, because some some housing authorities provide that. So that's the second thing. We beat down the door for that. And then the third thing is I would have her make sure that she's not wedded. I would say wedded to a location. So if she's really looking at Philly, let's explore why. You know what? Maybe you don't need to live in Philly. Maybe we move 200 miles to the west, or not even that far, 100 miles to the west in some cities that, to your point, are a little more rural. You can qualify for a zero money down loan through the USDA. If your economic circumstances are quite harsh, and if they're not as harsh as that, then USDA and others have other programs. So that's the 1, 2, 3 punch that I would do for her.
Amazing, amazing. So before we jump into your why, right? I want to talk about your why of developing this business to help others, because you've been able to help yourself, but
Yes.
now you're stepping in. It's a whole nother thing when we help ourselves, but then it's a whole nother thing when we actually put the energy and effort into developing infrastructure to be able to service others. So before we jump in there, I'm going to ask everybody, if you're enjoying this conversation, please, please, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. You can find Kim Talks on iTunes. Do your comments there. You can go to my Facebook. You can go to Pam's Facebook. Just engage. That's what we're really looking for. It's really easy to be passive on these, but to do a good podcast and to have great people, we need you, the audience, to help us know that we're doing the right thing. Give us some feedback. Awesome. So Pam, let's jump into, okay, you're making your money on your house. Is great. No problem. You've got your education. You can do this. You don't even need, I'm
Yeah.
guessing you're making enough
Yep.
personal income. You don't need the hassle of trying to build a coaching program. And I'm
Yes,
just
it's
going to let
true.
everybody know the platforms are somewhat intuitive. So if we have, I don't know which platform you're using, there's like Kajabi, Thinkific, Udemy,
Yep.
there's all these different platforms out there. They are somewhat intuitive. However, it is still time consuming. It is
Yes,
still,
that is
you could
true.
be on a beach, Pam. You could be on a beach having a margarita, enjoying the revenue from your investments. Why are you coaching? Why are you doing this?
I do this for a couple of reasons. One is because I feel I am called, I am obligated, I am required. I love to help others. The tent is big enough for us all. There's more than enough cake for everyone. And it's no fun to just have the cake all to yourself. And it's just something that I think has always been within me. This notion of be a light in this world. So that's one reason I do it, because I feel I must. A second reason that I do it is because um, I know that most people want to own their own home and just don't know how, or just even if they're not thinking about a house, they want to be the captain a little bit more of their life than they are. They don't want to break out into a hot sweat when they open up the latest round of bills that have arrived. So I want to help them do that. That's really it fundamentally. I love it, and I would do it kind of no matter what. I see this as the sort of thing I would do straight till my last breath.
Amazing. And so, okay, you say that. So I'm going to, you don't have to disclose your age. I'll share. I'm 53. And a lot of people I know are going, oh, I
Yeah.
want to retire and all this other stuff. And I'm going, wait, I'm doing this. And then when I turn 60, this is what I'm going to do. And then when I'm 70, I can maybe look at slowing down. Um, are you one of those type of people also where, retirement's just like, what is retirement?
What is retirement? Yes, I am. I'm exactly that kind of person. Yeah, when I hit retirement years, for sure, I will still be doing this because I enjoy it. I really do. It gives me satisfaction, and I also believe it is a help to the world. And how I do this in an even broader way, back to me mentioning my tenants, is that I am starting to work now with some nonprofits on tenant rights advocacy so that tenants are also aware of their rights, and so that I can show other landlords it is possible to both do well and do good. So yeah, that's just a
So
part of the structure.
in the States, I
Hmm.
understand that there is a program
Yep.
that you can set up to where when people pay their rent on time, it can
Hmm.
actually go towards rebuilding their credit.
Yes, yes, it does
Can you
exist.
share with me from a landlord's perspective how that can be a benefit or a payback or like share with
Yes.
me what that program is?
Sure, absolutely. So what a landlord can do is contact the credit bureaus. So there are principally three credit bureaus in the U.S. I guess probably the most well-known one might be Experian. A TransUnion tends to also be another well-known one. So a landlord can contact any of these credit bureaus and report that their tenant is making payments on time. They can do that each month, or they can do it at the end of, let's say, a lease period. And that's a way. And they can also submit. What they would do specifically with that is they would provide how much the rent was, whether the payment was made on time, and any other issues or positives associated with that. And then the credit bureau would incorporate that into the tenant's record, the tenant's credit record, and that would then improve their credit score. So a credit score is in the U.S. based on FICO, so that could increase their FICO score by several points.
Amazing, amazing. As soon as I heard that, I'm going, what an amazing thing for a landlord to be able to do to help. Because the number one cause of financial turbulence or bankruptcy in the United States is medical. And
Yeah.
people don't have control over that.
Mhm.
And, I almost see like you could be a landlord and almost like truly being of service to help people get on their feet, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing.
And
What
I
are
think that it helps the landlord as well. I think even the words that we use, landlord, tenant, those are the words. But ultimately, we are in a customer service business. And so, in the same way that if it was, I don't know, a university or a restaurant, and they would think how they can go above and beyond for their customer so that that customer returns or refers others. I think that's likewise how a landlord should approach it. So if they're wondering, oh, why should I take time out of my day to do this? And isn't this just going to make the tenant ultimately leave me? I like them when they're vulnerable. The fact is that the tenant is going to appreciate you, probably stay longer, not be immediately on the phone if you said you'd come today and instead you end up coming 2 days later, and they'll probably refer you. So in my case, I have a number of tenants where um, I I am the landlord to their family. So they referred, it started with one person, and then they referred their daughter, then they referred their son, then they referred a sister. And so each time I have an opening, that's who I automatically go to.
Amazing, amazing. We talk a lot about resiliency here on Kim Talks. We have a show that's all strictly resilience, and then where our parent company is Resilient New Media, and so I always want to find out a moment of resilience anywhere in your childhood, young adulthood. It could even have been last week, but a moment that you can identify, you can pinpoint, where without that muscle of resilience, you would not be sitting in this chair talking to me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So many moments of resilience. I'd say, you know, at, I can think about when I was 8 years old. My mom was instrumental in having me bust out of the neighborhood to a better school district. So for the parents who are out there, where they do that, or some other form of advocacy for their child, for them to remind their child, this is a resilient moment for you. And it was a resilient moment for me because I was leaving all my school friends to go to a different school district. And yet I persevered and knew that there was something better ahead. Now, fast forwarding into adulthood, resilience would be as I moved from one job to another, each time wondering, would I be able to take on this new role, especially if I had zero experience in it or felt I didn't have, in some way, I wasn't enough. The resilience to persevere and continue on, and to believe that that you have what it takes, even if you are doubting yourself in that moment.
Absolutely, absolutely. And actually, you just touched on something that is rampant in women entrepreneurs is that imposter syndrome. Should I be doing this? Am I really qualified for this? And I think that, identifying that that's a component of resilience is really key. That it's you can do it. We talk a lot in around women entrepreneurs in the United States actually account for less than 3% of traditional bank loans when starting their business. And if you're a woman of visible minority, it's less than 1%.
Yeah,
And that is my personal quest. Get more women on the stage and get more women asking for that money because you are worth it. And
absolutely.
you know and having and doing the small steps to increase your portfolio, finding these houses and these opportunities, becoming the landlord, putting that underneath you, saying I have a reliable $500 a month revenue coming in every month off of this property. These are ways to help women be able to even put together a financial statement when they go in for a bank loan. Right?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
just because you're purchasing property, this does not mean you are out just washing the windows and repairing the
No,
siding.
no.
It is one bucket.
That's
So
right.
it's one bucket. And then Pam, you've got your coaching as another bucket.
That's right.
What's your third bucket? Because I know creative women always have three things on the go. Am I right?
Okay, absolutely. So the third bucket, I probably have like 10, but the third bucket is now branching into agriculture as well as commercial businesses. So for me, a house is four walls and a roof, even if it's my own house. So my husband and I are now the proud owners of a small farm. And it has a house on it, but it also is in a commercially zoned area. And so I specifically picked something that would make money, that would not just sort of be a place to put up our feet. So that third thing that I have is self-storage, as well as small agriculture. And again, I encourage folks who, you mentioned flyover country. You can buy a plot of land, even a small piece, for probably $1,000 in some of these places, and USDA is quite generous with helping you to start a very small, call it 1,000 square foot farm. So that's the sort of thing I'm doing, is starting to explore other areas.
Oh gosh. You know what? It's going to be so exciting to learn and follow you, and I would love to see you actually speaking not only at real estate conferences but at women entrepreneurial conferences. I think that
Thank you so much.
you are a wealth of knowledge. So around this time, I'm always asking, what is a book? Now, you mentioned two books earlier, and you also have an ebook online. What's the name of your
Yes.
ebook, Pam?
The name of my ebook is How to Buy a House for the Price of a Car. So
Awesome. So that's
the
says it
specifics.
all.
That's right, the specifics for how to do that.
Oh, that's awesome. So, and that's on Amazon, or is
That
that
is
on
on
your
my
website?
website. That's on my
On your
website.
website.
So if you go to
And
mysmartcousin.com.
awesome, awesome. Um, so from there, you mentioned two other books. Is there any other book like today that you're enjoying as a, so we talk a lot with women over 40 who are
Mhm.
now building their wealth. So women between, and actually just so the ladies know out there,
Mm.
there's a lot of studies going on around women between the ages of 50 and 60, and that these are actually some of our most viable wealth building years. So if you're
How
hitting your
fantastic is
50s, isn't
that?
that awesome? Isn't that
Yes.
awesome? The landscape is changing. So if you've hit your 50s and you're sitting here going, really? You know, this is it? No, it's not. There's so much more.
So much
So
more life.
what's a book that as a woman over 40 that you say, this is really a good book. It speaks to me.
Yes. So a book that I go back to is a classic called The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, who I believe is a Canadian, a fellow Canadian of yours. So this book would have been written probably about 20 years ago, but why it speaks to me, even as a woman and as a woman of color, is that it talks about those dynamics that aren't always clear to you in the moment, but show you when you're about to reach a tipping point. So I think about it in terms of escape velocity. Anyone who has started a business is always trying to figure out, how do I move from one of many thousands of ants to the one, to just getting up just slightly above. And so the tipping point has an awful lot of lessons on how this can be done. So this is something I refer to again and again.
Amazing. Amazing. So yes, that is a great recommendation. Okay, we're going to close out today. And honestly, I've gone a little bit longer today. I appreciate those of you who have
This has
stuck
been so
around.
fun.
It has been amazing. And Pam, I would love to invite you back.
Oh,
And
thank
actually
you.
I would love to actually look at different states and actually review some of the opportunities and how those could be leveraged. I just think you're a wealth of knowledge.
I love that,
So
I love that.
awesome, awesome. But what we're going to do is we're going to close this out. A quote, something that has resonated with you for your life that is your North Star.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm a big fan of two people, Oprah Winfrey, as well as Nelson Mandela. So one of the things that Oprah Winfrey has said is that it always looks impossible until it's done. And that so speaks to me because yes, absolutely. That's when it seems it tells me that you can't give up too soon because success is always right around the corner. And then Nelson Mandela, he has quoted a proverb that you can go fast if you go alone, but you go much
Go.
farther if you go together. Exactly,
I
exactly,
love that. That's one of my favorite proverbs. And
absolutely.
that is the collaboration piece. And that's
You
where
got it.
incredible leaders like yourself, Pam, can, if you collaborate. It's really fascinating because I interviewed a Olympic gold medalist, a wrestler, female, for the Rio Olympics here in Calgary. She's actually here in Calgary.
Mm, wow.
And she said, the coach I went to the Olympics with was not the coach I started wrestling with,
Hmm.
but I have never accelerated without a coach. And when she was at the Olympics, her coach was smaller than her, and she put him on her shoulders, I swear, with the Canadian flag on her shoulders, holding the little stuffed plushy thing that they had at the Rio Olympics, and lapped the auditorium
Love it.
with her coach on her shoulders. So all I'm going to say, ladies, gentlemen, anybody who's listening, coach up if you want to accelerate up. And if you want to go fast, go alone. But as we know in the story of the hare and the tortoise, fast is not always the best. But if you want to go far, go together. So again, Pam, I appreciate you. Can you share with us where we can find you, your social medias, your emails? Share everything, because I am absolutely certain people will want to reach out.
Thank you so, so much, and really enjoyed this. This was just so engaging. It's always fantastic when I get to talk to a fellow motivated female entrepreneur. So my website is www.my, so that's my smart, SMART cousin, COUSIN.com, because I am your smart cousin. So www.mysmartcousin.com. And then you can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at My Smart Cousin. That's my handle.
That is amazing. Thank you, Pam. And I want to thank everybody who's gifted us with their time, because I know how important your time is, and we know it's non-renewable. So make the most of your time every day. Next time you're feeling your resiliency is lagging a little, or you just need that boost or that community because you want to go far, be sure to listen and lean into our resilient community. You can join us at resilientgift.com and get your free membership. This gives you our monthly magazines that will showcase different podcasts, different guests, different women of inspiration, insight, and business, and really just lean into our community. But if you have a story of resilience or really great business and you're ready to get that story out there, DM me at Resilient Series on Instagram, and I would love to hear what you have to say. So we are celebrating and showcasing female founders, coaches, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, and those who aspire to be any and all of the above. Until next time, I'm Kim Hayden, your host here at Kim Talks All Things Real Estate. And until next time, be good to yourself.